If a nuclear bomb goes off, where are you hiding? It's already over depending on the proximity, so I'm just chilling. I'm not hiding. I'm getting a front row seat for that. I want to be vaporized in a millisecond. I went on a tour of the underground Berlin bunker network, and the tour guide, who was also one of the people responsible for running it in the event of an actual nuclear attack, straight up told us all that if he knew a bomb was coming, he would buy the most expensive bottle of champagne he could, climb to the top of the tallest building in Ground Zero, and then enjoy the show. He would rather get vaporized than ever go into one of those bunkers. And that's probably my choice too. I learned in elementary school that hiding under my desk will protect me from nuclear explosions, so you'll find me there. I'm not sure why Zuck is bothering with a $100 million bomb shelter when he could accomplish the same thing with a few pieces of wood. From what I understand, the point of hiding under a desk is not to protect you from the radiation but rather one. To be below any window that may be looking at the blast so you don't get lacerations from the glass exploding into the room or third-degree burns from the flash, and 2. So that when the shockwave collapses the building, you're hopefully somewhat protected from the falling debris by the metal structure your desk is made of. Nah, just going to pour a nice, big drink. My sister lives in Hawaii and a few years ago they got a text message from emergency alert system that they were about to be bombed or whatever. There's literally nowhere to go. They poured a drink, sat on their lanai, and cuddled their dogs. Made sense to me. There's apparently a huge thing with island people about knowing full well they're going to die with the island if anything happens, and it gives them this sense of like, peace and place, I guess. I bet it's a comforting way of thinking about it. If a nuclear bomb goes off without any warning, and you're within the range of the fireball, you wouldn't even have enough time to process what's going on, let alone find a hiding spot, before you're incinerated. So the more realistic question would be, if a nuclear bomb goes off and you were luckily far enough away to not be instantly barbecued, where are you hiding from the fallout? Lucky for us, the radioactive fallout from a nuclear bomb has a pretty short half-life. You only need to shield yourself from the radioactive dust for about 2 weeks before the radiation decays to relatively safe levels. If you're in your car, hopefully you've got enough water in there to survive 2 weeks, because what you'll need to do is close all the windows, stuff the vents to close them off, and hopefully not run out of oxygen in there for the next 2 weeks. Your car almost certainly won't run due to the EMP, so that's about your only choice. If you're at home, do the same thing with sealing all the doors and windows. Immediately fill all your bathtubs and sinks and any other containers you can find with water that you'll be using for the next 2 weeks, before your city water gets contaminated. The water in the pipes won't be contaminated yet, but the reservoir water is, so collect as much clean water as you can, while you still can. If you need to let any loved ones into the house who were outside during the blast, strip all their clothes off and leave those outside, immediately wash them thoroughly with soap and water, keep the dirty water and rags/towels you used far away from everyone. Remember, dust is the big enemy here. Dust is what carries almost all the radiation from the blast, so keep as much dust outside as you possibly can. Hopefully you plan for this in advance and you've got potassium iodide tablets everyone can take for the next 2 weeks. A Geiger counter will help you stay away from areas of the house that are unsafe. Get out some board games, because your electronics are probably all dead, and you're not going anywhere for the next 2 weeks. I'm not hiding. A millisecond of brilliant light and we're vaporized. Much more fortunate than millions who wander sightless through the smoldering aftermath. We'll be spared the horror of survival. Unfortunately not as simple, unless you know for sure that a bomb is going to detonate right over your position. You won't be instantly killed. You would be instantly blinded and any part of your body in line of sight to the flash would burn, the severity depending on distance. Then it would take a few seconds for the blast wave to reach you, which may not kill you either depending on distance. Just leave you with crippling injuries and ruptured eardrums. In this thread, people who don't realize how likely they are to survive a nuclear blast. Ground Zero is vaporized, but atomic bombs are very survivable if you are a couple miles away as long as you know how to respond. Hiding from the initial blast, iodine tablets, the dust is the longer-term deadly part, and so wearing a mask and rinsing off or changing when you go indoors to keep contamination away. So I actually had to deal with this question on the fly. I was in Hawaii when we all got the missile incoming alert on our phones. Once I verified that others had gotten the same alert, I then had to think where to hide. First I thought the bathroom? No. The closet? No. The hallway? No. I concluded it's an atomic bomb. There's no hiding. So I got comfy in bed and waited to die. We had been informed the intercontinental ballistic missile only takes 15 minutes to get here from North Korea, so that's how long we all knew we had to live. In that, people had to call family to say goodbye. I had concluded that unless there's more than one missile, I probably would survive the initial blast, as my island probably wouldn't be a target unlike Oahu. But my parents were there, so I concluded they would die. I was worried now about fallout. And having to survive off what food and water I had. And now having to defend it from my neighbors. It was an interesting exercise. Thankfully it was a false alarm. Oh, I did see video of dads wrenching up drain covers and dropping their children in and replacing the drain cover over them. An interesting strategy. The fathers ran off though. Not sure where they hid. I'd think the blast would still get to the kids through drainage openings though. If we are dumb enough to use nukes, I would rather be incinerated than scratch and claw until a slow death in what is left of our planet. I live in Switzerland. I have a full-blown nuclear shelter in my apartment building because it's mandated by law. Anti-blast doors and ventilation plus bunk beds and portable toilets. Can house all residents. Its daily use is a cellar, so people keep emergency food stock in there just in case. I live within the hazard radius of a nearby nuclear plant, which would be the likely target of any nuke were fired at my region. Not really anywhere safe to hide from a nuclear blast if it hits closer to home, but I do have potassium iodide tablets for the family to help fend off radiation sickness for a couple days on the road while we get the fuck out of the radiation zone if that plant is targeted. If I'm at ground zero, I'm going outside to watch it fall and detonate. Something about staring death in its eyes and not being scared is oddly poetic. Just one bomb and near it? Get in my car and drive as fast as I can away. The absolute chaos of that many people being hurt, burned, blinded and then effectively poisoned all at once would overload any emergency services on Earth. You want to be nowhere near the after effects of this. Short term and sure as hell long term. Your house is contaminated, your water is contaminated. Every element of how you exist in that neighborhood is fucked, for a long time. Now if more than one go off. In lots of places. Find a way to speed up the process in the most pleasant way possible, because the coming definition of survival won't be something you want to live for. Not hiding at all. The last thing I want is for me or my family to live through that and then have to fight with other humans for survival in a nuclear winter, only to die of starvation, radiation poisoning, cancer, or all three. Nope. I want to die in the first wave blast, done and dusted. Literally. I live too close to a major target to worry about it. I know the location of one bomb shelter, but I have no supplies, and I'm willing to bet enough people around here think they could outrun it by getting the hell out of Dodge that there'd be too much traffic to get to it in time. I live in the middle of a major area that would get a direct hit, so in the few minutes I get I would sit in my balcony with a drink in my hand and wait for the bright light. Isn't the big issue that typically no one knows where it will fall? Because if it falls at your doorstep there is no hiding, you'd be incinerated on the spot. Which I think, I'd rather be at the epicenter just so we make this death a quick one. Being further out and surviving and the effects of radiation and a slow and painful death is not preferable to me. I've seen Chernobyl. Those guys had zero chances of survival. I don't even know if doctors right now are even trained on how to deal with nuclear radiation damage. Since it's uncommon. Especially if they have hundreds of patients flooding the hospital in mass panic. We saw how hospitals were practically collapsing due to COVID and not having enough PPE. Just don't feel like I'd want to be bothered with dealing with survival. My grandfather always told me in the event of a nuclear apocalypse, he would get in his car and drive directly towards the blast site. The closer you are to the impact point, the quicker death it will be. If that's scientifically true, but it makes sense. I have a master's in nuclear physics, and my advisor had the best advice: you don't hide from a nuclear explosion, you run out to catch it. This sounds silly, but it's the best advice I've ever seen. If a nuclear warhead is anywhere near you, go straight to it. Here's why: you die instantly as opposed to the weeks or months you suffer from radiation poisoning. And anyone not dead from the blast will absolutely suffer radiation poisoning, radiation sickness, and death from those. Those kinds of deaths are wildly horrific and presented quite accurately and well in the HBO series on Chernobyl. Look at what those in the hospital were enduring. And that's 100% realistic, because that absolutely happened. Just seeing this question and realizing that it's as relevant today as it was for me in late 60s elementary school with duck and cover drills. I don't think hiding is going to be an option. I can't imagine why the government would make a public emergency announcement. It's about 10-minute window. I want my final minutes on Earth to be lived in blissful ignorance. Mutual destruction is supposed to keep us safe. I live in Las Vegas and think a lot of other targets will be first.